Greetings and welcome to the second video in this module. In the previous video, we identified the purpose of emotions and defined emotion regulation as providing the right conditions for emotions to stabilize. So, what exactly are those conditions? Well, I'm so glad you asked. In this video, we will present the garden metaphor to introduce the key elements of emotion regulation. So let's get started. Many of us have learned in life to try to control our emotions by ignoring or stuffing or judging or shaming or criticizing them. So why do we try to control our emotions with these sorts of behaviors? Well, for many of us, that's what was modeled to us. And in addition, this is also how other people tried to control our emotions. So therefore we learned, well, I guess that's how you do it. So unfortunately, this sort of emotional control especially applies to individuals who have been traumatized, and especially to people who have been emotionally abused. So remember, trauma is invalidating, but invalidation is also traumatizing. The main goal of emotion regulation from a trauma-focused DBT perspective is to see and treat our emotions the same way you would treat a garden of flowers. For example, if you want a healthy garden of flowers, would it make any sense whatsoever to control or coerce, manipulate, guilt, or avoid the flowers? Of course not. Instead, what both flowers and emotions need to grow and flourish is to be nurtured and cultivated. In other words, to be taken care of. So flowers, like emotions, do not need to be controlled, but cultivated. Do not need to be coerced, but cared for. TF-DBT has 6 specific interventions to nurture a garden of emotions. Each of these strategies is a metaphor for specific ways you would cultivate a real garden. So for example, in a real garden, you need to plant the right seeds. In a real garden, you need to do some weeding. In a real garden, you need to check the soil. In a real garden, you need to do some pest control. In a real garden, you need to do some fertilizing. In a real garden, even if you feel like neglecting it or maybe even destroying it because you're so sick of taking care of it, you need to act opposite and take care of it anyway. So point for point, each of these strategies you would use to care for a real garden, well, as it turns out, these are also strategies we can use to care for our emotions. So in the case of our garden of emotions, we need to plant the right seeds by taking care of our physical body. We need to weed out the myths or misconceptions about emotions themselves. We need to check the soil by making sure we are grounded in the right information. We need to do some pest control by using effective problem solving. And when you feel like neglecting or even destroying this garden of emotions, you need to act opposite and take care of it anyway. And furthermore, you need to fertilize with the right emotional chemicals every single day. Let's summarize what we've learned in this video. Point number 1. Many of us try to control our emotions by ignoring, stuffing, judging, shaming, or criticizing them. We engage in these behaviors because this is what was modeled to us, because this is how other people try to control our emotions. This sort of emotional control especially applies to individuals who have been traumatized, and especially to people who have been emotionally abused. Point number 2. The main goal of emotion regulation from a trauma-focused DBT perspective is to see and treat our emotions the same way you would treat a garden of flowers. For example, if you want a healthy garden of flowers, it would make no sense to control, coerce, manipulate, guilt, or avoid the flowers. Instead, what both flowers and emotions need to survive, thrive, and stabilize is to be nurtured and cultivated. In other words, to be taken care of. And point number 3, TF-DBT has 6 specific interventions to nurture a garden of emotions. Each of these strategies is a metaphor for specific ways you would cultivate a real garden. Plant the right seeds by taking care of your body. Weed out the myths about emotions themselves. Check the soil by making sure you are grounded in the right information. Do some pest control by using effective problem solving. When you feel like neglecting or even destroying the garden, act opposite, take care of it anyway, and fertilize with the right emotional chemicals every single